It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. We begin with Michigan's biggest race, one that will deeply affect daily life here. In November, voters will choose a new governor. On the Republican side, the race is shaping up around Congressman John James and businessman Perry Johnson, who's spending heavily out of his own pocket. Just days ago, one of their competitors became the first to drop out, former House Speaker Tom Leonard. He was running what most observers considered the most substantive policy campaign in the field. As Speaker of the House, he ended Michigan's driver responsibility fees. He worked with former Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan on auto insurance reform. And he pushed to expand Michigan's open records law to the governor's office. He says he left the governor's race because it had gotten too negative, that he wasn't willing to compromise who he was to win. It is a striking claim. It's also one we think is worth examining. Tom Leonard is here. Tom, welcome to the Metro.
Hey, Robyn, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
You dropped out because you said you weren't willing to compromise who you are to win, as I mentioned. I'm wondering, how would you have had to compromise yourself to become Michigan's next governor?
So let's take a step back. And I was very clear in the campaign trail. The reason we got in this race was because I didn't see one candidate on either side of the aisle that was really putting forth bold solutions to turn our state around. And you look at the fact that we're bottom 5 for unemployment, bottom 10 for income growth. A quarter of our population suffers from some type of mental health issue. 74% of our fourth graders cannot read at a proficient level. I could go on. And frankly, I wasn't seeing anybody putting solutions on the table. And in your intro, you mentioned we were the substantive candidate. We were putting those solutions on the table every single day. I didn't see that. And what I was finding was, generally speaking, in today's political environment, there were two things you really had to do to try to get traction. You either had to go extremely negative, get in the gutter, do the name calling, or second, you had to put more into political theater than you actually did the substance. And what I found was in this political environment, we were the one campaign in the governor's race really taking on the utilities, but we were doing it in a substantive way every single day, putting solutions on the table. And what I found was to really cut through the clutter, you had to be willing to stand in front of the headquarters of DTE or consumers, do a 15-second Facebook video or TikTok video cussing at the CEO. That's how you cut through the clutter. I wasn't willing to do that.
So you're saying that at the end of the day, issues mattered less than the performance, than
Absolutely.
The political fighting.
Absolutely.
How did we get here? What's gone wrong with our political environment?
I wish I had the answer. I believe so much of it has to do with social media. I mean, social media was starting to become a thing 10 years ago when I was speaker, but it wasn't the thing. And I've talked to many people that work in D.C., and I've asked them, I've said, in Michigan, it's gotten really bad in terms of individuals not focused on policies. I said, is it really that bad in D.C.? And they said, yes. They said, right now, you have more people in Congress that are more concerned about making TikTok or Facebook videos than actually putting real solutions on the table. I wasn't willing to do that. I wanted to be the person that ran a campaign that my kids could be proud of. That's exactly what they did. And when I realized that this political environment wasn't conducive to that, that's when we decided to step aside.
Social media, though, is oftentimes the place where you can connect with younger audiences. I mean, this is something that we lament within the journalism industry, that younger folks are not going toward news sources, reputable news sources. Instead, they're going toward influencers on social media who are not vetting their own information. Did you not see a potential path of balancing that, of trying to increase your presence on social media? Did it feel to you? I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that like that kind of those performative gestures, that was a bridge too far for you.
And what I found, Robyn, and listen, I'm not a social media algorithm expert, okay? So this is really getting into the weeds. But again, what I found was if you put together a minute and a half substantive video about how we need serious MPSC, Michigan Public Service Commission reform to hold the utilities accountable, you'd post a video and you might get 6,000 views. If you post something, a 15-second video doing name calling or what have you, it would blow up and you'd get 300,000 views.
Rage bait, as it's called.
Correct. And I talked to some experts about that. I even talked to some people in the media, some television people here in the state whose names you'd probably know. And they said, Tom, it's not just you. They said, we've seen the same thing on our show. If you actually put a substantive video on, it gets a few thousand views. You put a video up with people doing name calling and it goes viral. And again, I wanted to do something that my kids would be proud of. And frankly, our state needs problem solvers. I don't know what's going to happen if during this next cycle we get a governor that's not focused on solutions. And I've been very clear, we need somebody that wants to do the job. And by somebody that wants to do the job, they got to be willing to make the tough decisions that they may not see the fruits of, our state may not see the fruits of for 10 to 15 years, but we've got to make these tough decisions.
When we think about some of this rage bait that you're mentioning, that we're certainly seeing across spheres when we are engaging with social media, there is a lot of toxic political rhetoric. How much does this issue have to do with the state of the Republican Party today? Because one of the people that has been the arbiter of a great deal of toxic rhetoric is President Trump.
I would say that there is a lot of improvement that can be done on both sides. I mean, listen, let's be clear here. I mean, even during COVID, our governor ran a video with an 8645 in the background. Now, nobody is going to be able to claim that that's appropriate, and nobody's going to be able to claim that she didn't know what she was doing when she did that. Okay? There is a lot to be said on both sides of the aisle right now in toning down the rhetoric. But again, it's going to take the right leadership to do that. And that's exactly what we did on this campaign. I mean, every single day, I woke up and I attacked problems for our state. And I was very clear to Republicans everywhere that I went. I said, Democrats gave Republicans a playbook 2 years ago for what happens when you wake up every single day and your focus is hatred of one person versus putting forth a vision, you lose. And I was very clear to Republicans, if our focus was hatred of Democrats or hatred of Jocelyn Benson, instead of putting forth real solutions and a positive vision, we were going to lose. And that's what we were focused on every single day, was solving problems and attacking problems for this state.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are not going to push back against what you're saying right now, which is that the focus has to be less on attacking a single person, even when it's the most powerful person in the world, President Trump, and it has to be more about solutions and policies. I think a lot of people can get behind that. But I mean, you launched your campaign with a video saying that as President Trump protects his border, I'll have his back. You told Cranes last summer you'd met with senior White House staff and thought you were in the running for Trump's endorsement. So when you say the race got too negative, I mean, was the negativity coming from your competitors, or was the bigger constraint that the path to the GOP nomination ran through a president whose style is itself negative?
It was more the former. So what I saw in the Republican primary over the last month is that it was getting extremely negative. A lot of name calling. I mean, we've even got one of the candidates is suing another one right now. And again, I won't sugarcoat it, Robyn. Republicans are in for a very tough environment in November. I mean, it happens when your party is in the White House. It happens every cycle. In the midterms, you run into a very tough election cycle. Republicans are in for that right now. And I was very clear, for me to spend the next 3 months attacking my opponents, it was going to do nothing but force our nominee to be limping into the November election. I was not willing to do that. I wanted to stay focused on solutions. I wanted to stay focused on attacking problems. And unfortunately, I didn't see a path to getting the nomination by just doing that. So that's why we bowed out.
I mean, early polling shows Congressman John James with 37%, leading Perry Johnson at 20%. You had about 3%. So what do you say to those who believe you simply dropped out because you didn't run an effective campaign like James and Johnson are doing right now?
Yeah, I would say every time we went somewhere and we would speak, I mean, we would win the room. I mean, there was no doubt about that. I'd also say I believe we were very effective of changing some of the policy issues on this state. I mean, when we got in the race, okay, absolutely none of the candidates were focused on mental health. They started to talk about mental health months in, okay? None of them talked about accountability and ethics. We early on put an accountability and ethics package on the table. We forced them to start talking about that. Data centers, nobody was even talking about data centers until I was the first candidate that came out and started opposing them. And the Press Association just had their debate last Thursday. What was the number one topic coming out of that? What was the number one story coming out of that? Where these candidates stand or where they stood on data centers. So what I would say is our campaign, even though it might have been polling in the single digits, we changed the trajectory of the issues on this campaign, and I'm proud of that. But again, going back to the media, I would say this. Look at M Live, and I will call them out directly. Months ago, M Live made the decision they were not going to cover certain campaigns and give them special stories, if you will, unless they had raised $3 million. What does that say? What does that say to a media resource that decries money in politics, but then says we're not going to cover two of the candidates because they didn't raise $3 million? What does it say to one news source when they ask the candidates where they stand on energy policy? And I give a very thorough, well thought out answer. One of the candidates doesn't answer the question, but instead sends them to their social media post. And they take their social media post and embed it into their stories and get them thousands of views.
Hey, I am the first one to criticize my industry. I will say, though, we do have to consider that something that's happening within news and media more broadly is a shrinking of resources. And unfortunately, I think outlets are having to make really tough decisions about who they can actually cover when it comes to political candidates. That's not to say that's what we do here at WDET. We are looking for that substance. And what you're saying is that you feel you really changed the conversation.
Yes.
So then tell me this, what is the consequence then of losing a candidate who was helping to change the conversation?
So let me go back to that. I'm going to answer this question, but I want to push back a little bit on something that you said. So
please.
So for instance, the media I've heard for years, they want to see FOIA reform in the state. They want to see the executive and legislative branch open to FOIA.
Freedom of Information Act.
Yep.
Yes.
So a few weeks ago, I put forth an executive initiative, an executive order that can be rolled out on day one. And I challenged the media. I said, you care about this. If you care about it, you should ask every candidate, are they willing to adopt our executive order so that it can be implemented on day one? And if they don't like the way our order is written, are they willing to put forth one of their own? To the best of my knowledge, not one media source reached out to any of those candidates to ask that question. Now, I know that there might be a lack of resources, but you mean to tell me that not one media source was willing to reach out and ask any of those candidates that tough question?
Well, I mean, the other side of that is the press aims to be fiercely independent. And so as a member of the press, I hope to come up with that idea on my own. And if a candidate is pushing me to ask a certain question, I'm going to find that to be a bit of a thorny situation. However, I still appreciate what you're saying here in that we all want more transparency. Certainly people who are working in news want it especially because we see our roles as being very mission driven. We serve the people, just like you were trying to do.
I agree. But what I would say is, even if they don't have to ask them about me, my question is this. Are they sick and tired of candidates just saying that they're going to take certain positions? Or are they willing to start asking them, where is your plan? And I wasn't hearing that, Robyn. There's a lot of blame, I think, to go around with the state of our politics right now. But I truly believe, listen, I support the media. The First Amendment, I support it. I know you all do an incredible you've got incredible work to do every single day, and it's your job to hold us accountable. But I believe some of these media resources, they need to start doing that. Again, going back to the MLive situation, there were only 2 candidates that are now on the ballot that they were not willing to cover because they hadn't raised $3 million.
I do know at least one outlet that did ask about FOIA, and that was the Detroit News. So I would like to shout out the Detroit News for that. MLive, I cannot speak to, but we're talking about the state of politics and the Republican Party right now, and getting a little off on a tangent about news and the press, which I love. Don't get me wrong.
No, that's okay.
This is the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Tom Leonard. He's a former House Speaker in Michigan, and he recently dropped out of the Republican gubernatorial race. We're discussing why he dropped out and whether that says anything about how our politics have grown more negative and less oriented around solutions. So I do want to think about how we improve our politics and the Republican Party. I mean, why do you think Congressman John James is in the lead right now for the governor's race for the Republican Party?
I mean, I think it's very clear, and I'm certain the congressman would tell you the same. He has been on the ballot in 2 major Senate races twice in the last 6 years, and he's ran for Congress in tight elections twice in the biggest media market in the entire state. So Congressman James has had, I think, nearly $200 million either spent promoting him or attacking him over the last 6 to 8 years. So when you've had $200 million spent on you statewide, you're going to have very high name ID.
So it's name recognition in your eyes.
Right now, I believe a lot of the polls that you're seeing, but again, it helps a candidate is the name ID. And that's what we were seeing with a lot of the polling. I think that's why you had so many undecided voters. But again, when somebody has had $200 million spent on them, again, either for them or attacking them, and that name ID is over 90%, it becomes very tough to defeat that person.
Well, and you would know that firsthand because you had only, a couple $100,000 in the bank versus that million.
Yeah, I mean, I think we raised just over $1 million. We had done a $300,000 spend in early January to see where the numbers would go. And they started to move. They did start to move in the right direction. But right about when our spend was ending, that's when Perry Johnson showed up and spent, I think it was $15 million. And it's very difficult to throw $300,000 at $15 million and stay competitive.
When you look at the party today in Michigan, the Republican Party, who are the leaders who you think should be empowered? I mean, who do you think is leading the party in a positive direction, in a substantive one, the kind that you want to see, that you are describing your campaign to have been about?
I think right now there's a vacuum. And that's why we stepped up. Again, and I was very clear, we were one of the later entries into the race. And I often say we. I just want your listeners to understand, because this is a team effort, and Janelle has been the most incredible political spouse or bride that a guy could have. But we were looking for that candidate that was going to put serious solutions on the table, and we were not seeing that. So what I would say is right now I believe there's a vacuum. I believe we moved the ball a long way in forcing these candidates to start focusing on some of these issues. But again, I want to see a candidate right now that's going to take that torch. I want to see a candidate that's willing to hold big tech accountable and ask the tough questions as it relates to these data centers. I want to see a Republican candidate that is not afraid to say enough with the utility monopolies. We need MPSC reform. We cannot have 3 appointed bureaucrats that are simply rubber stamping every single rate increase that comes through every year.
This also has me wondering about what it will take for Republicans and Democrats to reach across the aisle and work together. I mean, as I mentioned at the top, you worked with former Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan on auto insurance reform. What kind of world, what is the world in which Democrats and Republicans in Michigan can begin to work together again?
Again, it's going to take the right leadership and the right conversations. I mean, when I was in the legislature, I can tell you this, I was the person that introduced legislation to expand expungements in the state and actually gave full credit to Stacey Irwin Oaks, a Democrat from Saginaw, who had worked on this for years, but unfortunately couldn't get a bill to come up for a hearing because she was involved in a competitive Senate race. But I was willing to do that. And frankly, my race full of farmers, they didn't need expungement reform. I was the speaker that went to battle or went to war with the Republican governor to make certain that we got these driver responsibilities repealed in the state of Michigan and give 350,000 people their driver's licenses back, 75,000 of them in the city of Detroit, because it was the right thing to do. My district didn't need that. I've often said that the proudest vote that I cast in 6 years was actually the vote to put Detroit in a structured bankruptcy, and because it turned this city around. That was a vote that I didn't need to cast, representing mid-Michigan and a bunch of farmers. But what it's going to take is, again, it's going to take the right type of leadership that's willing to tackle these issues that are good for our state and not worry about having conversations with Republicans or Democrats. That's what I mean. We were at a debate about a month or so ago, and a simple question was asked to Republicans: would you be willing to work with Democrats to get things done for our state? And a couple of the candidates kind of hem-hawed on it. I gave a direct answer, and I gave those examples that I just gave you. And one of the candidates said, no, we win, they lose, end of story. That is the type of nonsense we have got to stop if we're going to turn the state around.
I wish we could keep talking, but we've run out of time. So in the last 10 seconds, Tom Leonard, is there a political path forward for you?
We're not going anywhere. My heart will always be in public service. If there's an opportunity, I'll do it. If not, no big deal. I'm having an incredible time right now coaching my kids' soccer, being a husband, and reconnecting with them. That's what makes me happy.
Tom Leonard, former Republican gubernatorial candidate. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I look forward to the next time.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Coming up, we've been discussing politics from the right side of the aisle. Up next, we'll shift to the left. We'll hear from the Democratic Party chair about what he's doing to try to increase the party's popularity. It's the Metro. Stay with us.